I pulled my daughter out of a Pentecostal school without consulting my husband. Fun fact, I was raised in a Pentecostal church on my mom's side. My parents are divorced, and I went to a Pentecostal church camp every summer where I met one of my ex-boyfriends. That's a story for another day. This story came April 9th, 2023. My husband, 33 male, and I, 28 female, have a daughter, 6 female. We've been married for 6 years, and we dated for about a year before we got married. When my husband and I first started dating, I learned that he grew up in a very Pentecostal family. He's not fanatically religious, and he always shares stories about strange things that he has seen at tent revivals, and people claiming that they are healing others from demons, speaking in tongues, etc. He said he's not really religious like his family, which I found reassuring because I grew up in a pretty relaxed family when it came to religion. He even told me how refreshing I was to him because of how open-minded I am. Anytime I've spent time with his family, he always told me not to take anything they said seriously. They really wanted me to convert and join their Pentecostal church, which I didn't want to, and it was a point of contention. When we got married, it was an overly religious event, but it was to appease mother-in-law, so they didn't want to make a huge stink. Appeasing his parents was mostly only in small doses here and there though, so I tolerated it because I love him. His parents became insufferable and tried to control a lot of decisions when my daughter was born. His mother gave him a ton of crap about how concerned they are about my daughter being raised by me. They wanted to homeschool her when it was that time for her to start going to school. I shut that down real fast. I've talked to him many times about how he needs to stand up to his parents and back me up more. He thought of a compromise where we could send her to a Pentecostal private school. I was skeptical but open-minded, and I wanted to meet with teachers and faculty at the school, and they seemed all right. I had friends that went to religious schools, so to keep peace amongst the family, we enrolled her. I knew I wanted to make sure her home life would be an environment for open-minded thinking, and I expressed this to him. He told me that he would be open-minded to enrolling her to another school if this one doesn't work out. She's been going to this school for about 2 years now. Anytime I talk to him about my concerns, he just deflects. I've had her talk to me about the concept of hell and asking me if I think her grandfather, my dad, is there. I recently witnessed her waving her arms slowly in the air, head bowed to the floor, moving to music when watching TV sometimes. I'm terrified of indoctrination at such a young age. I feel like I'm saying that weird. Indoctrination.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. Okay. I've had enough. I took her out of school without even telling my husband because he has absolutely no sense of urgency and shuts the topic down immediately. He was furious with me and screamed at me and was trying to tell me how much of a nightmare public schools can be, and that one of the teachers at the private schools is friends with his mother and she's going to be telling her everything. This is such a mess, and I feel sick about subjecting my daughter to all of this conflict and tension. My husband left and said he needed to process what I did. He's spending Easter with his parents, and I'm alone with my daughter. I'm not lost when it comes to knowing that I want to protect my daughter at all costs. What I need advice on is that I feel totally lost on how to go forward with my relationship. This has been one of the only times I've stood my ground and everything feels like it's crumbling. How should I go about the situation with my husband? I'm very curious to everyone's upbringing. I know that the topic of religion can be very sensitive on the internet. A lot of people get very defensive. No one wants to really talk about it. I hope we have created a space where we can kindly have a conversation, even if we don't believe what someone else believes. I want to kind of know what you guys were brought up in and what your faith is or what it was growing up. My parents were divorced, still are, obviously. My mom had us in a Pentecostal church all the time. We went to church camp, but my dad was an atheist. He didn't believe in any religion really, but we were put in a Catholic school system. So it was very confusing going back and forth because their beliefs were very conflicting with each other. It was a very confusing time growing up. Let's check out what Reddit's saying in terms of advice, because I'm not sure. how you handle something like this. Someone said, it's not just his family that's part of this cult. He's a part of it too. Why did you marry and have a child with someone you absolutely knew and was aware was so deeply embedded in this religion? OP said, he misled me for a while into getting me to believe he distanced himself from it. That's tricky, man. Religion and certain views and lifestyles, like you have to be on the same page, right? A lot of you guys are married and have more experience than me. If you don't agree on something as big as religion, what do you do? Like, what if your partner suddenly wants to start going to church or things like that? How do you handle that? We have an update and it came 3 days later. We are now at April 12th, 2023. I am very frustrated with myself for letting everything get out of hand like this. My daughter means everything to me, and I'm pissed that I didn't stop all of this sooner or saw the warning signs as a lot. I know it seems so obvious and I should have known better, but it's hard for me to explain why it was so hard. I was basically a frog in a pot of water, and that was very, very slowly starting to boil. There was a kind of weird fog of war from everything going on that I deluded myself into thinking compromise was possible. My husband ignoring what I found alarming really slowly evolved over time. It wasn't like a light switch. I know that hindsight is 20/20, but I can't help but feel anger towards myself. I basically took her out of the school Thursday morning of last week. The night before, we got into an argument when I brought up my discomfort about the school. I know a lot of people thought my breaking point was seeing my daughter praying and swaying. It was really a combination of a lot of things between the praying, the fire and brimstone mentality of the topics about hell, and the fear I sensed coming from her. The awkwardness and coldness that I would get from faculty at the school whenever I picked her up. She would at times spew gibberish or recite Bible passages of which she doesn't even comprehend or understand what any of it actually means. My frustrations boiled over and my husband refused to talk about it, as he has done several times before over the last 2 years, so the following morning I just went and I took her out of the school. After he screamed at me and argued with me about how public schools are dangerous, he stormed off, and I haven't heard from him since that argument. He is completely MIA. Keep in mind, this update was 3 days later. So he's been gone for 3 days. I've met with a few schools and I'm already trying to find solutions on that end. I'm not too worried about being able to find a less scarring environment for her. I think there are a lot of good options for her on that front. My main worry now is the unpredictable nature and silence from my husband. My brother has had some connections to a few divorce lawyers, so I talked to some in preparation for the worst. Yesterday evening, a man in his late 70s, early 80s stopped by our house. I didn't answer the door because I didn't recognize him. He went on to suspiciously mosey around the property, looking around the house, and then left. I called the police and they went around and surveyed, but the man had left before the police arrived. Was it someone from the church or school? That's my guess. Earlier this afternoon, I went to get the mail and I saw this man again and he approached me. He walked up to me as if he knew me and said he wanted to check on the welfare of the child that lives in this house. I asked him who he was and he refused to answer me. He then started to mention the name of a psychiatrist I see and mentioned that a little girl being looked after by a young woman with mental illness is a cause for great alarm. Something along those lines. I've been going to a psychiatrist for anxiety. It's nothing out of hand, and I've gotten a firm grasp on keeping it by medication, and I've been very okay with it. Only my husband knows about this, and I assume his parents know because he knows, and whoever this man is knows them is my only assumption. 100%. I told this man to leave, and I threatened to call the police. He left after he said something about how the girl is going to be protected. I'm going to meet with a lawyer tomorrow and figure out a plan. I'm going to file for a divorce because this has gotten to a point where I now feel unsafe. I worry that me being treated for anxiety disorder will be used against me. I have no idea what they are plotting against me, but they are playing mind games with me. I left the house with my daughter. We're safe, and I have a much clearer idea and solution going forward. I'm not going to try to salvage the relationship with my husband, and my main focus is to make sure my daughter is in a safe and stable environment. This is giving me anxiety. The next update came 1 month later. We're now at May 15th. I'm currently locked in a battle with my soon-to-be ex-husband over our differences on how we both want our daughter to be raised. He stormed out to spend Easter weekend with his parents, leaving us in silence for nearly 2 weeks. I noticed substantial withdrawals from our joint bank account. I promptly transferred the remaining money into a private savings account, and I left our home with our daughter for the safety of my brother's house, several hours away. I started engaging with a divorce attorney, exploring the process, filing for a divorce and a custody order. After nearly 2 weeks of no contact, my husband called me, accusing me of taking his daughter away. His mother, audibly yelling in the background, attacked my anxiety disorder, referencing me as Miss Clonopin and not wanting me to drag her granddaughter to hell with you, claiming grandparent rights, etc. I told him I thought it was best that we engage going forward through our lawyers, and I hung up. This ordeal has been an absolute nightmare. After filing a petition, any negotiations for a settlement have quickly reached an impasse to a point where I don't see how we wouldn't eventually go to court. My brother has been helping me with legal costs, and he suspects things are being drawn out to try to bleed me dry financially because my husband makes a lot more money than I do. The negotiations reached an impasse because of their aggressive claims against me. They allege that I'm making up stories about the intimidation from the older man, though I'm telling the truth. They also argue that by me pulling our daughter out of a Pentecostal school and refusing to allow her to interact with her grandparents has removed her from a stable environment, and I have thrust her into an unfamiliar one, accusing me of secular bias, insisting that my actions were damaging to our daughter's mental and emotional well-being, that I was depriving her of her faith community, and that I was causing unnecessary confusion and anxiety by uprooting everything she had known and taking her hours away from her main family and friends at school. They're also claiming that I was actively ignoring my husband's attempts to make contact, despite him not actually making any attempts outside of that one phone call he made. My lawyer says they're trying to exploit the court's usual preference for maintaining stability in a child's life, and they want to see me feel a sense of hopelessness so that I cave into a compromise. My brother thinks it's good to go to court because he said a lot of this BS on their end will be exposed. Can't wait for this nightmare to be over. I just want my daughter to be safe from crazies. There is one main comment here on this post, so let's check it out. Someone said, the fact is though that for alleged kidnapping, I can imagine there were no Amber Alerts, and you pointed out that he had not contacted you for 2 weeks. This is serious parental neglect, especially if he actually believed that there was any kind of perceived real threat to his daughter. You can't call upon a doomsday scenario but do anything at all but twiddle your thumbs for up to 336 hours. If he cared at all for all the things he mentioned, decisive legal action would have been exercised right away within the first 24 to 48 hours. The same goes for the grandparents. If you and the mother are unsuitable and they had any reason to believe something foul was amiss, they should have done something from the get-go. I seriously can't get over the 2-week delay. You can't say that instability is the huge issue, but be permissive about it for 2 weeks and then make a huge fuss about it. Interesting perspective. Like, I wouldn't think of that because this is way above my head, let me tell you. Not qualified. OP responded to that and wrote, "Yup, that is my main argument. He's trying to work around the 2-week thing by trying to claim that I was ignoring his attempts to make contact, which wasn't true." And if you guys go to court, phone records are everything. Any evidence if he did make a phone call or text or email, that will be so easy to prove. So we have a final update, so I'm very curious to see how this all played out. But first, we're taking a sip of water. It's hydration station time. Drink your water, you need it. Cheers. I love the pre-sliced pickles. Oh. I want to know what team you guys are on. Do you prefer an actual pickle or the sliced ones for like burgers and sandwiches? Something about these is just the ratio of like the amount of juice per bite, if that makes sense. The final update came 2.5 months later, so we're now at June 24th, 2023. We are now bringing in a third-party mediator because negotiations still aren't going anywhere, but I doubt it will make a difference. What I want and what my husband and his parents want are vastly different. Their terms are crazy. He wants full custody of our daughter and that I can see her once a week. Originally, it was once a month, and then it was increased to once a week as their way to throw me a bone, quote. They persistently attack my mental health. The numerous times I've heard phrases like secular bias or mentally ill thrown towards me in these negotiations make me want to vomit. He and his friends seem to gaslight me into thinking that I knew what I was getting into when marrying into the family. The entitlement from my husband's mother is frightening. She also asserts that she doesn't feel like God looks after the courts anymore, citing this as the reason she doesn't want this going to trial because of me being granted temporary custody. She is furious about that. My husband has since been granted supervised visitation after they fought for it. At least it's supervised because if they do any crazy religious stuff, it would probably be noted by the supervisor. My daughter always seems very quiet after visits, which makes me paranoid. The evaluator/supervisor seems thorough whenever she visits me, though sometimes their scrutiny can be uncomfortable. They even visited my brother's house to observe our interactions. A lawyer keeps reiterating that all of this bodes well for me. Whenever I'm observed by a supervisor with my daughter, everything goes well. So I do have confidence that I won't lose custody in the long run despite their unrelenting attempts to argue against me. I'm starting to call their bluffs about my mental health and these secular bias claims. My brother keeps saying much of the stuff is not going to hurt me, yet it is still very hard. I'm exhausted by how many times people try to make me feel like I'm a negative influence on my daughter or that I'm harming her. The whole process is very anxiety inducing. What sucks is when it inevitably goes to trial, it might be dragged out because the courts always have a jammed schedule. My brother, who has been helping me financially through all of this, continues to be my rock. He's used many of his contacts to help me through this process, and his unconditional support is invaluable. This has thrown a wrench in my husband's plan to drag this out to hurt me financially. They didn't anticipate that I would have a very strong support system. Recently, my husband has made several attempts to meet just the two of us. I've been hesitant to agree, but he keeps emphasizing that his parents wouldn't be around to convince me to meet. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could be an opportunity to talk some sense into him. It did not go well. He still could not grasp that it was not about faith, but the environment in which the faith was being presented. I reiterated that his religious side of him, which he has all of a sudden, was hidden from me for years, and now I'm expected to act like this is something he always wanted. It makes me sick how manipulative he can be. On top of that, when we parted ways, I ran into his mother, who was waiting in his car. She accosted me with typical doom and gloom Pentecostal threats about me going to hell and how I will regret waging spiritual warfare on their family. These are all instances I'm logging and reporting back to my lawyer, especially verbal harassment from his mom, like this one. I can't wait for this never-ending headache to be over. Thanks to everyone who has supported me. I appreciate it so much, and I'll be sure to update whenever I can. I highly doubt the mediation will yield any progress, but who knows? What I do know is that they seem nervous about going to trial, which is probably why he wanted to meet with me. I do have more confidence than the last time I posted about this going my way, but this is just awful to go through. And there are no other updates. I want to know what happened, unless it's still being dragged out all this time. There's no way. 2 years? Could it? Oh no. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section. Let's please be respectful to others. I'm trusting in my community on here. It's okay if everybody disagrees or believes in something different. Please. Please, the world's too dark. We need each other. Stay classy out there, stay sassy, and stay kind, okay? See you later.